talking with the editor-in-chief of Weddingbells magazine. Why is it that spring and summer are traditionally wedding season, and more so now than ever before, or less so, or is that on a level?
Well, I mean, in Canada, when we talk about wedding season, we can absolutely 100% credit the weather for spring and summer being the high times of weddings. But actually, the month of September has become very, very popular, and I think that we all would agree that, I remember the past few Septembers have been, phenomenal weather, and it's just it's warm enough, but it's not terribly hot, and weddings going into October as well. I mean, Thanksgiving weekend can be quite lovely as well. So that's, but having said that, I mean, weddings are happening, 12 months of the year, but, the summertime, sort of June till mid-October is really the big block that we're talking about.
All right. You folks looked into some of the things that are on brides' minds in particular for your 2011 Reader Survey, if I understand correctly.
We did. This is an annual survey we do, and we ask our respondents all kinds of questions, and they tell us all kinds of nitty-gritty, fun answers to questions all about their wedding planning. It's always really interesting for us to see the results.
You think that any of your results this year are influenced by the wedding this coming Friday?
In terms of what? I mean, types of questions we typically ask them are sort of the amounts of money they're spending.
Okay, not everybody has a grandmother who's one of the richest women in the world. So.
This is true. It's interesting today. One of the things I read, because, we could read about the royal wedding till the cows come home these days, was that Kate wasn't going to wear a tiara, and I just find that absolutely insane that anybody would say that when she has the crown jewels to choose from.
Okay, back to reality. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were about to start telling us some of the things that real folks are telling you.
Well, probably the most interesting thing that we found with our 2011 survey results is that couples are actually spending more on their wedding than they have in past years, and it's actually up significantly. The magic number that they've told us, we've averaged it out, is that they're spending $23,330 on their wedding. Yeah, and in 2010, they were just spending a little bit above $20,000. So costs are going up, and people are budgeting more, and they're planning to spend more.
Do people have that kind of cash, or are they willing to go into debt for the wedding?
Well, I think some people are willing to go into debt, although it's nothing that we advocate at Wedding Bells. I mean, basically, we advocate smart spending and smart budgeting. And a lot of couples already live together, so they pay for these weddings themselves. And, 74% of engaged couples are living together. Typically, couples are, 29 and 30 years old, so they're established people, they're working. And, the engagement period is that time when people decide that they're going to save for this wedding. And, again, this is an average. So some people are spending this much, some people spend more, some people spend less. But, it's never smart to go into debt for anything, especially a wedding, because you have a newlywed life to live afterwards. Yes.
How much planning? Somebody who's just popped the question this weekend is probably reasonably setting a wedding date for the midsummer. Does that give enough planning time, or?
Oh no! If you were engaged this weekend, you'd be hard pressed to find somewhere in Canada to get married this summer, because people start planning basically a year to a year and a half in advance, especially for the peak months like June, July, August, September. Very difficult to book. To book a Saturday. If you could look at other days of the week, but they may be booked as well. I mean, summertime books up very quickly. So typically it's sort of, 6 months is a quick turnaround. William and Kate were actually a very quick turnaround. They were just over 5 months for their wedding, which is a very short engagement. But
they were probably talking about it a lot before they announced it to the public.
Oh, I'm sure that they were. But sort of 1 year to a year and a half is a typical engagement period. So, if you're having an average-sized wedding, with 145 people, which is another statistic that we've come up with, you need that time to plan that party. There's lots of details to cover off.
145 is the average-sized wedding in Canada now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to picture how large that is. If there are 8 people at a table at a reception, that's 19 tables, basically. Okay. Head table in 18. Yeah, all right. I can visualize that. Okay. Proportionately, most weddings still happening in church, or I see more and more people doing unusual thing, down on the beach or in the park, or some cases of some pretty strange, sporting venues, or any variety of options.
Right. Well, definitely some couples are opting for a destination wedding, so that could mean getting married, on a beach. It could be in Europe. There's lots of options with that. I would say traditionally most people do have a ceremony and reception. Some couples are opting to have their celebration in one venue, so they don't have a church and a reception hall. They do it all in one place. That's become very popular over the past few years. And, basically when you're talking about people, getting married at sporting events and things like that, what's happened with weddings, and this has been happening for quite some time, is that people really want to have a memorable personal day, so they're willing to pull out all the stops to make their day uniquely theirs.
All right. Some of the highlights, and here I'm reading from your publicity bump from this year's survey. 30% of brides say they're not sure they're completely over a past relationship. That's an increase from 2010. 59% of brides confess that the size of the diamond matters. And 25% of brides actually make the final decision on the ring. That one interests me. Yeah, that was the first year that we've asked some specific questions about the engagement, specifically about the ring, and, did you have it when you became engaged? Did you have input? And, does size matter? And obviously it does, with 65% saying that the size of the stone does matter. Now, I wasn't surprised about the 25% of brides being involved with the selection of the engagement ring, because that's been something that we've been hearing about and seeing at Weddingbells for a little while now. Basically, if you're proposing to someone who doesn't like surprises and is very particular about things, I don't think it's unromantic at all to let her have a little bit of say and maybe do it together as a couple to buy the ring. That's become a very popular thing. What's a good a creative way to go about popping the question if you don't have the? Do jewelers loan the ring on some sort of a spec basis, or do you do it with an elastic band? Or well, typically people wouldn't have the ring at the time of the proposal, but I have to say men are getting very creative with their proposals, just as couples are getting creative with their weddings. So it could be like a weekend away at a favorite restaurant, and it's basically it's something that's sort of chatted about. I don't have specific stories to share with you about that because it's typically a very personal thing, but I haven't heard of a lot of stunt rings being used. People typically go shopping after the proposals happened. All right. Alison McGill is with Weddingbells. 386-1161 is our phone number if you've got comments or questions. Alison McGill is with us this afternoon. You mentioned, Alison, that figure of, $23,000, which I think is a little higher than what my son and his now wife spent on their wedding, with a little help from the respective mums and dads. How does that break down? Let's talk about some of the ways that folks can control those costs, and what some of the priorities are. Well, as you can imagine, the highest number that comes into that $23,000 equation is for the reception venue. Yes. And, when we broke our statistics down, it came in at around $9,500 that you're going to spend for the venue. And, that includes catering and bar and all the bells and whistles that go with that. That is probably, the biggest expense that you're going to have. So when you're booking your reception, this is where it's time to sort of get creative, and you can save dollars by getting married in seasons that are not, June through October, that window that we talked about. Yes. Looking at days of the week that are offbeat, so a Friday or a Sunday, that may work for you. And also looking at things like maybe you don't want to have a dinner, maybe you want to have a luncheon wedding. That can dramatically cut the cost as well. So there's lots of ways that you can tweak that cost. Another cost that actually went up in our 2011 survey, which was interesting, was the cost of the wedding gown. Now, over the past few years, our respondents had told us, they were basically planning to spend just over $1,000 on that dress. And this year, actually, the cost has rose to $1,700. That is a significant jump. Wow. Yeah, and
the dress is one of those things where I always advise brides, if you find the dress of your dreams, don't try. If it's not in your budget to buy a $5,000 dress, then don't try it on, because you might fall in love and then you might not be happy with whatever you end up with after that. So be really savvy when you're shopping and know that magic number, and stick to designs that are within that bracket for you.
How large is the average bridal party nowadays?
We didn't actually have a statistic on that, but we're seeing anywhere from no support staff, which is interesting. Sometimes it's the couple just goes it alone, to anywhere from up to 3, 4, 5, 10. It depends on the size of the wedding, and sometimes people just have a hard time cutting that off and knowing when to stop adding to the wedding party. It's always an interesting subject who you choose for your bridal party.
All right. Still, traditionally, the bride's responsibility to provide dresses for all of her maids.
Well, actually, the bride does not pay for them. Typically, the people, groomsmen and bridesmaids pay for their own fashions.
Well, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's not part of the $23,000.
It's not part of it. So other things that we include in there, photography is another significant investment, and this is something that I recommend not trying to barter your way out of. It's a hard cost, but at the end of it, if you don't have your photographs, you have memories, but you want your great photos as well. So that's one thing that I don't recommend compromising on. Right,
rather than having your cousin Charlie, who's pretty good with a camera.
Exactly. Other costs that are significant, flowers, cakes, those types of things. Stationery is another significant cost. And, of course, the honeymoon. The honeymoon is a big chunk of that, and it comes in at around just over $5,000 that people are planning to spend on their honeymoon.
Almost one-third of brides agree that prenuptial agreements are a good idea. Yes. That number's up quite markedly from a year ago.
It is. It was 26% in 2010, and this year we've got 32%, which was another interesting statistic that I think that we had. And, prenuptial agreements are something that for so long nobody ever wanted to talk about, and that they were, a very hot-button subject. And, it's something that people would get their feathers ruffled about, saying it takes the romance out of the wedding. It kind of dooms the marriage before it starts. And, basically, you have to be savvy, and you have to think ahead about your financial future. And I don't think there's anything wrong with protecting yourself. I mean, we need to look at Mr. Paul McCartney, who didn't sign a prenuptial agreement when he married Heather Mills. Well, we know how that story went. Now, most of us aren't Paul McCartneys, but it's a lesson worth learning, I think.
Is the acceptance of the prenup in the minds of more women a result of more women bringing something significant to the partnership?
Absolutely. I mean, again, let's go back to the average age of an engaged woman. She's 29.5. She's almost 30 years old, working, successful, has a career, and, more than likely could own a home and have her own money and investments. So, it's not just men. I think the misconception forever was that it was always men who wanted these. Absolutely not. It goes both ways, and women absolutely are looking at prenuptial agreements as a good idea.
According to brides, grooms are more likely to delay the wedding due to cold feet. 82% than brides, 18%.
That's an interesting one.
Is that a change, or is that a traditional sort of a result?
That's something new that we asked this year, so it was just kind of interesting to see that statistic. I guess the guys are the runaway groom. We don't have a runaway bride. So that's interesting that our respondents told us as such. That is actually a statistic I'd like to get a little more research on, because that's a pretty high number, 82%.
All right. I want to go to the phones here. We did offer folks the opportunity to question you at 386-1161. Linda, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Frank. Very interesting program. I'm going back years. We've been married 50 years now. And I'm wondering about today's brides and grooms, all the presents that are given to them. Mm-hmm. And you were mentioning earlier in the program about gifts that... they live in a house together before they get married, and then they get married, so they have all their furniture and everything. And so the people that have to give them wedding presents don't know what to give them unless it's money. And you feel really cheap if you give them money, because we can't afford a lot of money. And they have all these registries now, too, which they've had for many years, I know, but the registries like at the Bay and Eaton used to be, and all these very expensive gifts that they want. Like one friend of ours put down, they wanted a riding lawnmower, you know. Well, I mean, who can afford to send them that, you know? So
Yeah.
I was just wondering what in your book, you know, bells and whistles and all that.
A whole lot of questions arising from that, which I've got a couple of particular ones myself. I thank you for bringing it up, Linda, but talk about that a little bit, Alison. What is an appropriate wedding gift these days?
Well, I think what people lose track of, I mean, the number one thing that we're talking about here is it's a gift. So it's basically whatever you choose to give someone is a gift, and that is, you know, that the fact that someone is giving you a gift unto itself is the gesture alone, I think, is significant and enough. So I think there's been a lot of talk over the years, like what's, you know, how much should we spend, and, you know, what do I get the couple if they're living together and they have everything, and, you know, registry is a good idea. We always advise couples to register on a bunch of price point levels because, you know, everybody works off a different budget, and you're right, most people can't afford a riding lawnmower for somebody. So, you know, it's being savvy and thinking about your guests when you're doing this. And actually, a registry, you know, I think for years was thought of, you know, in a different light than it actually is meant to be. It's actually beneficial to guests because you actually sort of say, if you're thinking of giving a gift, here's some suggestions. These are things that we would need.
Am I right about this, that most wedding gifts are given with the bride in mind? I mean, come on, my wife is more interested in crystal and fancy plates and dinner settings than I am.
Right.
When I was married, and then this is not a modern thing particularly, this is more than 20 years ago, and one of my pals actually gave us, clearly more with me in mind than my betrothed, a stepladder. My wife never forgave him for it, but I thought it was great.
I see nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think gifts should be they're not necessarily just, especially today, I will say that they're not necessarily just directed at the bride. Absolutely not. Talk about some other registries that are available. We can talk about a lot of couples register for their honeymoon, so you can help the couple out for a travel experience. And, you know, I hate to go back to William and Kay because we're talking a lot about them these days, but they have done such a fabulous thing where they have the charitable donation, which I think is fantastic. And a lot of couples do that as well. You know, if there's a cause that's near and dear to your heart, whether it's heart and stroke or cancer, it's a great way to gift someone and give back to something that's near and dear to them.
Yeah. Talk about the honeymoon registry a little more. I've heard of that. Is that really very popular now?
It is becoming very popular. I mean, again, just in light of what our caller had shared with us, you know, it's hard to know what to get someone when they have a house and they have all the trimmings that go with it. A lot of couples register for an experience. So basically, you know, anyone you can register for honeymoon at Walt Disney World. Lots of hotels offer a registry. Lots of travel agencies have the same kind of thing going. But it's basically, you know, it's a registry to gift the couple with this honeymoon experience.
So you provide your credit card number to a travel agent, and here's $100 towards the airfare wherever they're going.
Yeah, it's basically like a couple would register probably for flights, for the hotel, for, you know, different experiences. You know, if you were going to Walt Disney World, you could be registering for a dining plan, you could be registering for park passes, that kind of thing. So it's all rolled into one, and it's basically up to you how much you want to, you know, gift the couple with to have this experience for them.
Essentially a way of giving cash without giving cash, which still has a bit of a stigma attached to it.
Well, the cash thing has had a stigma in years past, but again, a lot of cultures, you know, that is commonplace, and that is what the cultural tradition dictates. You know, in Italian weddings, it's very common to give cash. It's very uncommon to give gifts. So again, the money issue can be a bit of a cultural thing as well.
All right. Some very interesting stuff, and may I say, I hope for those who have plans in the immediate future that the weather improves for you, because I don't know that that an outdoor wedding or reception or those photographs in the garden would be working very well today. It's kind of rainy and it's kind of gray, but we'll get better. Alison, I thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
The magazine is Weddingbells and available generally on shelves in.
We're on newsstands, and you can also catch us at weddingbells.ca.
All right. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Fun topic.